All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. I am going to hit record so I do not forget. Oh, and it's already recording. Perfect. Oh, all right, perfect. So, yeah, we will be recording this. So, if you guys have questions after this or if you want to rewatch anything, I will send this out along with some resources as well. So, you guys will have that. I did have quite a few people that were asking also if it was going to be recorded. Um, I am also going to be making sure, and Paula's on here too, we're going to be checking the chat. So feel free to put any, even though this is kind of a formal setting and it's probably uncomfortable to just open your mic and just share, but we are kind of a small group on here, so feel free to like just make it informal and ask questions and share as you would like as well. What we're going to do today is I'm going to kind of touch through. Some of you are probably very familiar with the youth employment process. You've been doing this a while, and you maybe are just coming on to just dot your I's and check your T's and make sure you're just a good review of following, making sure you're following all the requirements that are out there. Others of you are probably new, and this is you're kind of treading some new water. So you're like, I think I know what I'm doing. I've talked to other districts, but I'm still not completely sure that I am doing what I'm supposed to be doing. So we're going to cover just a little bit of everything today. Um, so we do have Jessica Juma on from the North Dakota Labor and Human Rights. And then we also have when I talked to Jessica, she's like, there's a lot of things I can't cover because the federal side needs to cover that. And so we reached out to Jeffrey Simic from the U.S. Department of Labor. And so he's going to give kind of the main presentation today and just kind of chat with you guys about what the kind of the do's and the don'ts are. But also, I want us to kind of think about the process of hiring in that youth employment process as far as what the ads are, the job description. Do you guys have a job description? Are there things I'm kind of working through creating some templates that are going to make things easier for you guys, but these are things that might just take a little bit of time. And the more that you guys share with me on what you guys are using, I can kind of help create some of those templates for other districts to use as well. So as we think about this, and I have to apologize for my hacking. I've been dealing with this 2 week, whatever this is. Um, but we're gonna make it through. Thinking about the application process and what is out there as far as you can maybe find a template out there for an application, but do you have to create one if you don't find one? What should you put on there? What shouldn't you put on there? As far as the interview goes, I'm sure you guys are all aware of what you should and shouldn't ask in an interview, but do we have some good, just generic questions that we can create for you guys to make sure that you don't fall into a hole? And some of the questions that we have are kind of more geared towards um, adult staff. So, is there some differences between youth that we can kind of change some of those questions? The wages, so just having a discussion on what are you guys offering for wages, and then just having just a discussion on that. The documents that you should fill out upon their hiring, record retention, we'll touch on that a little bit. And then in the very end, I will once again send out some resources and just so you guys know who to call. You can always call like myself, Hannah, Paul, or Kelly or Sarah or anybody like that as well, and we can kind of direct if we don't have the answer to who you should be talking to. But hopefully you have some contacts at the end of this of who you can call with any questions. And then finally, touching on recruitment a little bit on we're going to talk about the different ages. So if you're new, you're probably realizing some districts only hit like the 18 and over um, employment, where some you are maybe thinking about 14 and 15-year-olds or 16 and 17. And maybe there's a reason why they are targeting and recruiting specific ages. And hopefully this will help kind of guide the rhyme or reason to why they're doing that. So with that, I'll just do a quick little introduction. I'll introduce myself first, Paula, and then Jessica, and then Jeffrey, I'll let you go last, and then you can just kind of take it over. So my name is Lindy Berg. I'm the Area 1 Program Coordinator, and then Hannah's not on today, but she is the Area 5 Program Coordinator. So you guys are probably familiar with her as well, and you can always reach out to us with any questions as well.
Hi, everyone. I'm Paula Como. I am the State Program Coordinator for Soil and Water Quality Leadership Development.
Hi, everybody. My name is Jess Juma. I am the Director of Operations for the State's Department of Labor and Human Rights.
And my name is Jeffrey Simic. I'm with the U.S. Department of Labor. I am the wage and hour investigator that is posted in the state of North Dakota. Linda, do you just want me to go into my spiel?
Yeah, why don't you go ahead and do that? And like I said, if you guys have any questions, please feel free to put those in the chat. You can also send anonymous questions to myself or Paula. Amber Fetch is also on, so you can send her questions as well. In the little two for the chat, right now it says everyone, but you can put specific people in there, so you can send us things directly, or you can send things anonymously. So yeah, I'll let you take it over, Jeffrey.
Good morning. My name is Jeffrey Simic. I'm with the U.S. Department of Labor, Wage and Hour Division. I am located in Bismarck, North Dakota. That's where my office is, and my area is North Dakota is the most area that I operate for enforcement. This morning we're here to talk about child labor protections, and they vary based off of age. For your type of employment, no one under the age of 14 can be employed by you. We'll just skip that point right there. So 14 and above. If they're 14 or 15 under the age of 16, there are certain hours limits that are for individuals that are under the age of 16, number of hours they can work in a day, number of hours in a week, and when they can work. After the age of 16, there is no limitations on the number of hours worked. But under the age of 18, there are a number of occupations that individuals that are under the age of 18 are not allowed to do. So it could get very diverse and tenuous or tedious to go through it all. But we'll start with like the 14 and 15-year-olds. They can only work outside of school hours, and the school hours are always based on the local school district. And they can only work 3 hours a day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. They can only work 18 hours in a week that school is in session. They can only work 8 hours a day when school is not in session. And they cannot work more than 40 hours in a week when school is not in session. They're also limited to when they can work. They cannot work before 7 a.m. and they cannot work past 7 p.m. from June 1st to Labor Day. From Labor Day to June 1st. After June 1st to Labor Day, they can work until 9 o'clock at night. They add 2 hours in there, but they're still maxed out at only 8 hours a day and no overtime. So if they're under the age of 16, they can't work more than 40 hours in a week is the biggest thing. Then you get into under 18, you get into the hazardous occupations, and that's where we get into things that they're not allowed to do. They cannot drive for work. They can drive to work, but they can't drive for work. So they're unable to drive, for one of the subjects that was discussed was tree planting. They can't be driving the vehicle as they're planting trees. Not allowed to. Sorry, it's not even a side-by-side. It's a motor vehicle that can operate on a public road. Not allowed to drive it. They are so don't let them drive. They can't run any power tools, saws, a drill, none of that. They're not allowed to if they're under the age of 18. If they're under the age of 16, they're not allowed to run a lawnmower. or a weed eater. Those are limited by the federal law. At above 16 and older, they can run a lawnmower and they can run a weed eater, but they cannot use the lawnmower as a mode of transportation, like driving from one location to another to mow 2 different areas. You can't use it that way. You can use it in one spot, load it on a trailer and have somebody else haul it over and drop them off, and then they mow that spot. They cannot use it as a mode of transportation. They're not allowed to use a forklift if they're under the age of 18. But they can use a shovel, a rake, any hand tools. Those are not limited by their when it comes to wages, they gotta at least make minimum wage. And if they're above the age of 16, they work more than 40 hours a week, they gotta be paid proper overtime. That's the basis, nuts and bolts of the child labor law. Other than that, it comes down to situational and any questions that you folks would have pertaining to a situation that you may be experiencing in your location or within your area. Last week when we prepared for this, we tried to keep this as simple as possible because we could spend a full day just going over child labor laws and the hazardous occupations. So with that, I will turn it over to Jessica, who can talk about the state issues that they have, and then I'm open to any questions while on this. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. Yeah, so the state you're going to find, we only have regulations and laws for 14 and 15-year-olds, which is why we brought the Federal Department of Labor in to speak on the 16 and 17-year-olds. For 14 and 15-year-olds, all of the restrictions that Jeff mentioned, lawn mowing, construction work, driving motor vehicles, they all apply. The state law mimics and mirrors the federal law. We do have a state youth employment and age certificate that is supposed to be filled out for all 14 and 15-year-old workers. You can get it from our website. We're happy to email you links to it. You can even request paper copies. It's just a 3-part form, and there's a section on the top that the youth themselves does have to fill out and sign and date. The middle section is for the employer to complete. It includes things like verifying their age through, either a driver's license or some type of state-issued ID, birth certificate. We want to make sure their rate of pay is at least minimum wage. So there's a section there asking about their rate of pay and a section asking about the job duties that they're performing. And then the bottom section is the parental consent section. So it's just got the parent or guardian's information. All 3 sections have to be completed, signed, and dated by those applicable people. And then there's some instructions on the bottom on who gets a copy of that. We get a copy once it's reviewed by our department and we've approved it, and then we actually send a copy over to Jeff for all the ones we receive. So you don't have to duplicate for those 14 and 15-year-olds. We will send that copy over to them. We send them out monthly. But the school hours, the permitted hours, all of those, like I said, they are going to mirror the federal laws. There are some exemptions. I'm not going to sit and go through all of them for you as far as the restricted hours and the work permit for 14 and 15-year-olds. Some of them involve like direct supervision of a parent or guardian, if that child is exempt from compulsory school attendance, and then working on a farm, doing agricultural work for a farmer. But we have a really great resource, and I know I sent it to Lindy. She's going to email it to everybody afterwards. It's our youth employment brochure. That really does a great job of summarizing both the state and federal laws, and then has some links and other information in it. But yeah, that's about all I have, unless, like Jeff said, you have specific questions. I'm happy to chime in and answer them, or reach out to us at any time and we can walk you through the process.
All right. Thank you both so much. Do you guys have any questions based on any of that information? Fortunately, we are just, you guys kind of have a specific, the jobs and duties that your seasonal staff do through soil conservation districts. So we can kind of tailor this information and kind of get to the point. But is there any questions that you guys have on this part? where do we find the youth forms?
I
Okay.
can throw a link
Go
in the chat if you want,
Sure.
Lindy, but it's also on our website as well.
Okay, yeah, if you could share the links, that would be great. And I'll, like I said, I'll share some links and some resources after this too. But yeah, if you want to share some links, Paula threw some links in there too. The next question is, what are the hours homeschool students can work?
Homeschool students fall under the same regulations. There is no exemption for homeschool. It's always based off of the public school in the district that they work in. So if they're working in, we'll say Can-Do, and they're homeschooled, it goes off of what is Can-Do's public schools calendar. So we would look at what their calendar is and what their school day is. And if school's in session for the public schools, that's the hours restrictions at that point.
Okay, I think that answers that pretty good. Let's see. So is it all people under the age of 18 that cannot operate motor vehicles for work purposes?
Yes.
Straight and to the point, yes.
Yeah, there's a real slim one in there for 17-year-olds that says infrequent, incidental. I mean, if it is part of the job, no. If it's once in 3 months, the individual gets asked to run to Walmart to pick up some envelopes. Yeah, that's not something we would do. But if it is an integral part of the day-to-day operations, yeah, then it's no, they can't.
Okay. The next question is, a rule has been that 16 and 17-year-olds can ride on the planter or fabric machine but cannot drive. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. So while we are waiting, if there are any more questions, please feel free to send them in the chat. That's great. I have a poll that I want to send out to you guys just to get some information on what you guys are doing out there. So I'm going to launch this. I think there's 6 questions. So feel free to answer those questions, and then we will kind of go through those answers too. And then hopefully that will spark some more discussion as well. Okay, here's another question while they're answering that. Can a 17-year-old certified Bobcat operate? Okay, can a 17-year-old that is certified in Bobcat operator operate a Bobcat for us?
No. No, that would be lifting apparatus. It falls under the same line as a forklift and stuff like that. No, they would not be eligible to because they're under the age of 18.
Okay, we'll give you guys a couple more minutes to fill out this poll. And then I'll hand it over to Paula once I close this, and she can kind of go through the results. And then one of the good discussion points we kind of talked about, even talking about this meeting, is that overtime and comp pay, and what does an end of the year incentive look like? Okay, here's another question. Are 15-year-olds able to sit on the tree planter, or are they only allowed to help with non-machine related tasks like weed barrier and such? So are 15-year-olds able to sit on the tree planter?
I would say yes. You know, they're um there's things about being a helper and stuff like that, but they wouldn't be on public roads. So, you know, they're gonna be out in the field and stuff like that. So yeah, they would be able to do that. They'd be able to be on the, you know, sit on the tree planter.
Okay, so I think this is sharing, Paula. So you should be able to share these results.
Okay. Is it sharing for everyone on the seasonal poll right now?
I believe so. Can everybody see
Okay.
that? Yeah? Okay.
Like, I've done polls on Teams before, but I've never done one on Zoom, so I'm learning new things. So it looks like we do have a good chunk of respondents that are looking at hiring 14 and 15-year-olds, but our majority are that 18 or 16 to 17-year-olds. And so some good information. I'm trying to, my Zoom is being weird. I can't actually see the short answer responses right now. So
Oh, let's see. Maybe if I hit view details here. Okay, let me share this, and maybe that'll help. We will share.
there we go.
Okay, so I'll go down to the next question here.
All right. So it looks like we are in the 18 to 20, well, I guess 16. So $16 an hour, if I'm reading that right, if they're under 18 years old. So it looks like we are between 16 and $20 an hour for our seasonal staff. Which is a good range. I know at the DNR we struggled if we were not in close to that $20 range.
Oh, here's some more.
Here's some more. So 750. I guess I would maybe bring that to the board. That's just my personal suggestion there. We struggle to find just about anyone for under $15 an hour. On the Minnesota side of things, I know that's a little bit different than what we look at in rural North Dakota. But yeah, that 16 to 20 seems to be our range. Yeah. So it looks like 18 is a very popular pay range, which is to kind of put it in perspective right now, especially if you're targeting over 18-year-olds, the average internship right now pays $20 to $25 an hour, is kind of the industry average. So if you are not at least flirting with that mark, you are probably going to be not very competitive when looking for seasonal employees, depending on your area, of course. So do you supply seasonal staff with water, snacks, bug spray, or other supplies? So yes to all. A lot of people supplying the PPE for their employees. I will caution you, I used to manage a pool, and we ran into this issue a few times with providing sunscreen, because if we provided sunscreen to staff and they had a reaction to the sunscreen, there was some potential that we could be held liable for providing the sunscreen. If Jeff or Jess has anything to add to that, I just know we were told to ask our staff to provide their own sunscreen for that reason. So some people are providing water and snacks.
And part of this came up with there was a comment from one of the people that we had talked to that there was quite a bit of money being spent on supplies for seasonal staff. So if you do supply this, you know, you can kind of go back and track and see how much you're actually spending on this. And if that's something that you're like, whoa, maybe it's kind of eye-opening that you didn't realize how much you were actually spending on supplies. Because you can always tell them, you know, they should be bringing their own things or whatever. But you guys can decide that, but that is something that that's why this question was brought up, just to see how many people were actually supplying some of these things for seasonal staff.
So
Well,
do you provide, oh,
Go
sorry.
ahead.
Well, something I've noticed is a lot of these kids are pretty new to working outside all day. So we'll tell them to bring their own water, and they'll bring 2 bottles of water for an 8-hour shift outside. And we did run into an instance a couple years ago where a kid started getting heat exhaustion. So we now bring our own water in the case of ever happening again. And also we ordered a heat exhaustion kit that we also carry on the tractor with us.
yeah, I would strongly suggest having a first aid kit and a heat exhaustion kit for your crews. They can be really, really important. One thing I know that we did with the DNR when I was with them, we didn't do it when I was with Cass County, but we would provide like a Gatorade mix, so that on those really hot days, that if someone was looking like they were getting extra fatigue, that we could give them something beyond just water. We could give them something with electrolytes and maybe some sugars in it too. So I would definitely like advocate for providing water. Anything beyond that, you know, is obviously up to your discretion, but having a heat exhaustion kit in the truck, especially if it's a spring like we had a couple years ago, where I remember the roadways were steaming after a rain, can be really, really beneficial, because, you know, as an experienced person who's worked in the outdoors, I wasn't prepared for 95 degrees in the first week of June. You know, I just was not prepped for that physiologically or with my supplies I was bringing with. The pay bump. So lots of yeses and not sures, few no's. I know, Jeff, you had some really interesting things to say about making sure that you were staying on track with pay bumps. That might be really beneficial for all the people who are saying yes with pay bumps, and also bonuses at the end of year.
Yeah, when it comes to incentives, even for seasonal employees, if you're going to give a bonus or an incentive, if they stay through the whole season or whatever it would be, remember, if it is a set bonus and there's a set standard, that is called a non-discretionary. And if whatever the bonus is, let's say it's for completing the season, excuse me, the bonus then has to be calculated into the regular rate for the proper payment of overtime for any overtime hours that are worked. So you may give a $500 bonus and then it ends up being $550 because of the number of overtime hours that were worked during the summer. So your bonus increases. If you go to a discretionary bonus where there is a potential for a bonus at the end of the year based off of a review by the board and supervisors on the quality of work and the work atmosphere or whatever, it comes down to the employee's evaluation, then that amount would not need to be calculated back in for the proper payment of overtime, because it comes down to the discretion of, like I said, either the board or supervisors on whether or not that bonus would be paid. So if you're looking at doing incentives, that would be the two different categories, you know, of what you'd be looking at. So for budgeting reasons, you may want to look at it for a discretionary bonus due to the fact that then you can kind of maintain your budget. Whereas if you think, oh, we can just do this, well, then you got to go back and calculate the overtime. That could throw your budget off, as an example.
So it looks like overtime is our preferred if we are going over on hours. Generally with seasonal staff, we don't often see comp time. I've only ever encountered it with very rare seasonal positions. Usually if there's like a seasonal manager or something like that, comp time might come into play. And with seasonal staff, overtime is going to be usually your best bet to ensure that once their season wraps up, that they don't have any like additional comp time to kind of carry out the end of the year. Comp time, if you do offer it in place of overtime, when they take that comp time, it still has to be paid out at the overtime rate. So it's not like, hey, I worked 4 extra hours today, I will just take 4 hours off, you know, next week, and kind of have it be at their regular pay. It's got to be at that overtime rate as well. So something to consider. Um, I know a lot of seasonal, they like the overtime on their on their checks. So it's nice when it looks like when you get that little bit bigger check. Do you offer end of year incentive or bonus? I jumped ahead a little bit, mainly because I was very interested when Jeff first explained this concept to me. But for all the yeses or the to be determines, I would make sure that you know what you are offering in terms of those bonuses, and make sure that you budget appropriately based on the guidance that Jeff just provided. And so I guess after some of these explanations and Jeff's further elaboration on some of these topics, are there any other questions that we have?
All right. Any more questions on that? And feel free to just unmic too and ask. But I don't have anything more on the chat, so we'll just keep chucking along. But if you guys have anything, feel free to keep asking as you need to. Okay, so we'll move on to, let's see, how are we doing on time? We're doing good. Okay, so let's see, what should we jump to? Let's jump to just record retention really quick and the documents to fill out upon hiring. So we're going to talk about like the ad and the job description and that kind of thing, and the wages in a little bit. But I do want to talk about with Jeffrey and Jessica on here and Paula, if there's anything. Let's just talk about when you do hire someone, what are some of those documents that need to be filled out upon hiring? Many of you have done this, so this is probably just a review, but just going through it for new people, what are some of those documents? And then let's just touch on the record retention really quick, because I know that has been an answer or a question of how long do we need to keep these records?
All right, so again, this is probably going to be review for most people, but documents that you're going to need the W-4 or an I-9, depending on how you are hiring your staff. You're also going to make sure that you take some sort of proof of citizenship or residency, so a work, a passport, a driver's license, a work visa, something of that nature. Birth certificates also work. Military IDs, tribal IDs also work as well for those. You're going to need, if you are doing direct deposit, you'll also need bank account information so that you know where to deposit. And if they are over 18, you will probably need a copy of their driver's license if they're going to be driving any sort of vehicle for that nature. When it comes to retaining documents, I would, in my experience, we kept them from anywhere from 5 to 7 years, depending on the entity that I was hiring for. And the reason for that time frame was there are federal documents that are required to be held on to for at least 3 years. Things like uh, payroll. My brain is having a moment. W-4s, things like that, are going to be be held onto for at least 3 years. OSHA, if anything was documented through OSHA, which hopefully not, those I think are 5 years. Jeff, please feel free to correct me if that is wrong. And so what a lot of entities that I have hired for did was, okay, we have to keep our financials for, I think it was 7 to 10 years. Usually any seasonal employees that did not return, those records were just kept with those financials. And then at the end, it was just a mass shredding event. Recommendations that I found online usually say between 5 and 7 years is a good safety net to retain all employee records, just to make sure you kind of have your tush covered just in case anything were to come up and you would need those records. Sometimes it's helpful if you're going to be a recommendation for a future job. If you go through a lot of seasonal employees, to have just those records, like the performance review, who they were, to jog your memory a little bit in case you get a surprise call from a job that they are applying to. Because we definitely had that happen a few times when I was across the river in Minnesota, where the manager would come and be like, "Do you remember this seasonal worker?" And you kind of have to rack your brain, like, "Oh, well, do we still have his application?" So you want to hold on to those. When it comes to hiring, anyone who's applied, it's good to retain those applications for a period of time, like 3 to 6 months, just in case they were to question or challenge a hiring. This is probably very unlikely, but that way you have their application materials. It's good to have some sort of way of determining how you ranked and why you chose to interview and hire who you chose, so that if someone tries to question it, that you can justify your decision. Because I know we have lots of applications to go through. Hopefully, I'm going to send that good energy out for our hiring season, that we're going to have lots of applications to go through. So make sure that you can justify who you interviewed and why you chose to interview them. And then hold on to the other ones just in case. If you have to terminate someone, you want to make sure that you hold on to those for about, I think they can challenge a firing. This is a good question for the HR collaborative too, if you ever face it, but I believe it's 3 months that they have to challenge a firing, but there's also other legal ways that they can potentially bring this back after that point of time. So just make sure that you have all of your bases covered. Hold on to those materials, hold on to your documentation for all of your employees. For, again, historically, I've seen it 5 to 7 years, and usually it's tied to our financial records. And so just kind of good practices from my experience. The state of North Dakota does not really have a lot of guidance. Other states do on how long you have to hold on to things. The state of North Dakota is not quite so rigid. But again, if Jess or Jeff or anyone else who is on this call has any other advice or guidance, I would love to have you guys chime in with what your experience has shown.
Oh, go ahead, Jeff.
We would, for us, everything's 3 years, for us. Hours work records, 3 years, payroll records, 3 years. That's for anybody, seasonal, full-time employees. So, we can't, because we can come in and look at it and we can request up to 3 years of records, So that's where ours are at for our enforcement needs.
Here's a question. If minors or seasonal staff is returning every year, do they still need to fill out the 4598 from every year?
If there is a break in the employment, so if they end employment at one summer and then want to be rehired the next summer, they do need a new youth employment certificate to be completed.
Okay, so they don't remove them from payroll. We switch them to inactive in our system. So, yes.
Yeah, if there's a break in that employment, they need to recomplete the form.
Okay, and then Jess, did you have anything else to add for comments on it?
For the records retention, there is no state regulation or statute that provides any guidance on that. It's on an individual basis. So like as a state agency, our department follows the records retention schedule that NDIT puts out. But there is no actual like state law that requires how long records need to be retained.
All right, thank you. Okay, we've covered the questions so far, so we'll keep moving along. The next question I want to bring up is the application and review process. So, and if anybody has any comments, feel free to unmic or put in the comments in the chat too. But when it comes to an application, so if you're new staff and you're looking to hire seasonal workers and you can't find an old application, what are you guys doing out there? Are you looking for just templates online? Are you thinking you would like to create your own and kind of tailor it to the workers that you are hiring? And then for the interview process, obviously, I think we are all pretty familiar with what you should and shouldn't ask, but also on the application, there are things that you should and shouldn't put on there. So I might open this up to Jeff and Jessica as well. I don't know if you guys have any. I think Jess said she didn't have any templates. They do not have any templates on any applications or interview questions or anything like that. But Jeffrey, I don't know if you guys have anything, but otherwise, this is something that hopefully we can help kind of create some just some template or good guidance for you guys as well. But do you have anything that you want to comment on? And then Paula, if you have anything, you can also add in there too. Nothing to add. All right. Paula, do you have anything that you want to add? Otherwise, this is something that Easton, if you want to chime in, I kind of talked to him earlier about just commenting on what they are currently doing and kind of working with us to put something together as guidance for what a good application and interview questions would look like.
Just a bit of advice from someone who's hired a lot of under 18-year-olds in the application process. Having questions that specify, are you available to work X many hours a week? Are you available if weekend work is part of the schedule or potentially part of, making sure that on the application that you ask them those questions specifically. The number of times I would have employees try to not work weekends or try to not work after 4 o'clock for a variety of reasons. But we had on the application, nope, you said you were available. And like, this is part of the job. That was often very helpful to remind them of what they exactly applied for and what they have signed up for in their current employment. So I always encourage making sure that application is very straightforward with those expectations that might be distasteful to someone who doesn't want to work weekends and doesn't like working nights.
Okay, yeah, go ahead, Easton.
Yeah, well, and like I said, ours was just a generic one we found. I have added questions to it. One of them questions being, are you over the age of 16 or not? Just to make, because we do want to know when these people are applying, if they're going to be able to ride our equipment or, do the stuff, those only over the age of 16 can do. And also a lot of our college kids who are over 18 and stuff, they're usually available earlier. So we always ask them when's the earliest date you can start. And then I think another one we ask is if they're in any summer programs. We don't get specific until the interview process, whether they're in baseball or FFA or something like that too. Just so we have a kind of an idea of what time they're going to miss doing that.
Asking about absences. You don't like, I wouldn't ask specifically about, do you have any major family vacations? But summer camps and vacations are often a big one for people who are still residing with their parents. And it's not unusual to see someone who's going to potentially miss an entire month of the season because they are going to be traveling for things that they have very little control over.
Yeah, and I think just having that open conversation is very good to have in that interview. I know sometimes you're trying to hire someone and they want to get hired, and sometimes you kind of tiptoe around um, some of those things. Like you realize they have other commitments or things that they want to do, but they're not going to come out and say that I am going to this and I'm committed to going to this, and it kind of happens on both ends a little bit sometimes. So just having that open conversation right away about what your expectations are, I think is really important. Um, I would like to, so along with the lines, same kind of lines of the application interview, talking about an ad and job description, which kind of goes along with recruitment. So just talking about recruitment in general, what are you guys doing out there? I know, I think some of you are going into the school and recruiting from different grades. But otherwise, is there anything that has worked for you? And feel free to put this in the chat. You can just comment. You don't have to open your mic and say anything. But if you can just comment in the chat, yes, we have a job description. We have an ad that we put out. Um, we created a job application, or you have a template that you used online. And if you have anything that you're willing to share with me as well that you can send me, that would be great. If you're willing to open that up, that I can share with other people as well, just for good examples of what's out there. But otherwise, what are you guys doing for recruitment? If there's comments that you guys can put in there, or just open your mic as well. I'll let Easton on mic again and talk about his recruitment and how it's been working for them to get some get some staff on board. But what else are you guys doing? I'll just leave it open for a couple minutes.
Yeah, we created a job description. We actually created two different positions. One's the general tree planting crew, and the others are tree planting technician. And how the people get the tree planting technician position is they're available before. I can't remember the date. I think it was May 15th or something, which is more reserved for our adults and college kids. They're allowed to do more. They're allowed to start earlier. We do a lot of our advertising, mainly in the local newspaper here. We have put it on the radio and our Facebook page and website. Something we're going to start next year. We kind of dropped the ball on it this year. Was we're going to go to the high school's career day, and we're going to actually set up a booth. Not so much even just for trying to recruit people, but we're going to have a bunch of like forestry career stuff and a lot of natural resource career stuff. Just kind of, anyone who might be interested in getting their foot in the door that way too.
Is there anybody else that would like to share? I see Dustin on here. Not that I'm gonna, well, I guess I kind of did point you out already, but if you have anything that you'd like to add.
Me?
Yeah.
Um, so the last couple of years, we've kind of lucked out that we had siblings that were working with our crew. So we hired the tech, and then they had their sister help out. And then we have one NRCS employee's kid that's going to be coming on this year for us, and then another sibling that's going to be with us. But so we kind of lucked out that way. Most of our, seasonal jobs, we do it on ND Jobs when we post for it, and then we put it on our Facebook page and stuff like that.
How about your application and interview processes? You have like kind of a pretty generic list and an application that you guys have created, or what do you suggest for new people out there?
Yeah, so we do have an application with a job description of like what they'll be doing. And then the interview, usually it's just to come in and sit down with the tech, and then she'll ask some questions and ask availability and kind of stuff like that, and when you can start, and then decide if it'll work out or not for us.
Awesome. Thank you.
Sometimes you just take whatever you can get, so.
Yeah. Anyone else? So I'm going to leave it open for just a short time here in case there's anybody else that wants to comment. Otherwise, I am going to stop the recording, and we're going to just hang on and chill for 5 minutes or so. And so if anybody wants to stay on and ask any questions off the record, you can totally do that as well. While I'm waiting to see if there's any comments, I should have had Amber introduce herself because she does have her face available right now. And a lot of you don't really see her a lot. And I suppose on the coffee hour, you're on the coffee hour quite a bit, but she sends a lot of emails and she does a lot of communication for our team. And so I'd like you to just introduce yourself really quick so you can kind of put a face to the name really quick.
Sure, I'm Amber Fetch. I'm the administrative assistant for NDSU Leadership Civic Engagement, NDSU Extension Leadership and Civic Engagement, and also the State Soil Conservation Committee. And yeah, you probably see a lot of emails from me that hopefully you read.
Thanks, Amber. Okay, I am going to stop the recording. And like I said, okay, let me